them.
advertised and everything for them.
Okay, stand by, please. Here we go. 4, 3.
Georgia Hollins College. Learn more right after this.
If you're looking for a new pet that your family will cherish every day, consider adopting from a shelter. Shelters are the best places to find a new pet. That's where you'll discover healthy, loyal, and loving animals, eager to become a part of your family. A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet, so bring home your new buddy today. To find out more, visit theshelterpetproject.org.
Welcome to Community Watch. Greg,
Doc,
how you doing?
doing great.
Well, I'm
Doing one of your shows.
Is this new?
What?
That's sharp. I like that.
I'm
Good.
trying to be like you.
No.
Yeah, I'm following your lead.
No, you aren't. You are the style king. You know, I just wear work clothes, but you know, you make a statement.
Okay, I'm gonna accept that one. But this is a show about Georgia Hollins.
Yeah. Well, our guest today is going to be Todd Jones, who knows everything. Well, he knows everything, but we're going to talk about for those students who are maybe seniors in high school, what they need to do at this point.
At this point, yeah.
You know, there are a lot of things you need to do, and not wait till the last minute.
You know, I've come to learn that we assume parents and students that are seniors are kind of doing the things they need to do, but you find out they're not.
Oh no!
So yeah, this is a very important show.
And I think we're going to talk about some other things too related to our summer session and financial aid, stuff like that. So I mean, this is a show where you want to get something to write with and be prepared. So we will be right back with our guest Todd Jones after this. So please stay with us.
If you drive buzzed, it could cost you around $10,000. You'll face major legal fees, major fines, and steep insurance penalties. You could lose everything. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Welcome back to Community Watch, and we're very happy to have with us again Todd Jones. And I'm always hesitant to give your title because it is, I think, the longest one at the college.
Unfortunately, I don't think that's the case. You know, there are others that are doing a lot more work. So,
all right, you are Vice President of Student Affairs. Is that what?
Vice President for Student Affairs,
and
Campus
and
Dean.
Campus Dean for the Floyd campus and Heritage Hall. And there's something else too.
I think that's enough for now.
Yeah.
There's other roles and responsibilities, so maybe not the title.
Well, this show is going to air in the middle of our spring semester, which would be late February, early March, probably. Although we may repeat it, as needed. So, at this time of a student's senior year, don't they need to be doing a lot of things besides just waiting for school to end?
Well, you're exactly correct. In fact, if they're looking at some of the big schools, the UGAs, Georgia Techs, they're behind the times already as far as the application process for college and so forth. For state colleges, they have time, but it's quickly approaching. Most institutions, including the technical colleges, now have application deadlines. and those can be anywhere from a month to 2 months prior to the start of a term. So they need to get rolling on that application process.
I know just from helping one of my mentees get ready for college that even though some of the colleges have an admissions deadline of April, May, and there was one that was even June 1st, their housing deadlines, priority deadlines, are much sooner than that. And you have to put a down payment to reserve,
yep.
Deposit to reserve a spot. So, I mean, you have to know or gamble on where you're going to get in, because, you know, it's one thing to get admitted somewhere and then not have a place to stay is another issue entirely.
And that's a good point. That impacts a lot of students. And for students that are moving away from home, looking at housing, their deadlines are typically much earlier. May 1 is kind of a national norm, the national date for students to pay their deposit in order to secure housing. But you have to have everything in place before you can even do that. So that just gives you an idea of how quickly students need to move if they're looking at something like housing. If you throw things like athletics into it in the mix, a lot of coaches are already making their decisions, and students should have already been in that pipeline well in advance. And typically that requires an application for many coaches for them to take a look at you.
And our deadline at Georgia Highlands is a little later than some of the larger colleges in Georgia, but we do have a deadline now. And there was a time when we didn't have so much of a deadline, or at least not as much of one, and students kind of got comfortable just wandering in and doing everything.
I'm wondering.
Yeah, you wandered in.
Yeah, well, as an access institution, we try to do all that we can to provide that opportunity for students. So August 1st is our application deadline for the fall term, and that's going to be a standard now. The reason most institutions have moved to application deadline is because the application process has become more complicated. There's testing involved in most cases with many institutions, and like Georgia Highlands College, the Compass Placement Test. So students need to have time to prepare for that and take that exam, and it's now part of the admissions decision. So it's no longer a true placement test, it's an admissions decision test, and so that has implications for students. So they should really start the application process 4 to 6 months in advance of the term they want to apply, to give them time to walk through the process and supply the needed documentation. In addition, for students that may have an issue, maybe academically challenged, that gives us time to work with them to maybe provide them some additional options. If they don't meet our admissions requirements, we might be able to do something if we have months in advance to work with them to give them another opportunity.
We probably ought to talk about that a little bit, because that is something that, well, I was going to say, continues to change, and you know, it has over the last couple of years. But students now, and this doesn't apply only to Georgia Highlands, but to colleges throughout the university system of Georgia, students test in the 3 academic areas of Compass, English, reading, and math. And at this point, they have to pass at least one of those 3 tests to be admitted, and they can't score below a minimum score on any test in order to be admitted.
Well, we can tell that you do a lot of work with students to know that, because
I have learned that.
It can be quite cumbersome to keep up with all the changing requirements, and there are some additional changes taking place this next year, and more with how the results are used in regards to the math scores. But and so that may have some implications on admissions as well. We're waiting to get some more information on that. But you're exactly correct. You have to at least pass one of the areas, and you cannot score below a minimum score in any of the areas. And we have all of that information on our website under admissions for students to go and look at the scores. We also have some practice links, and we strongly encourage students to do some of the practice tests. just so they become acclimated to how that test functions online. So that just being aware of how the test functions, typically we see a slight increase in student scores.
Does that change? I mean, I heard you say earlier, Georgia Highlands an access college. And it still may be, but clearly it has changed. I mean, because there was a time pretty much anybody could go to Georgia Highlands and somehow they would get you in, work with you, and go on from there. But clearly that's no longer the case. Clearly, there's some standards that have to be met now, or you won't be able to be admitted to Georgia Highlands.
Right. The standards have been implemented over time. I've been here since 2005, and even then we had a GPA requirement. Now it's a 2.0 and it remains a 2.0 GPA. So, that's typically, if you have a high school diploma, that's what most students are going to have, is at least a 2.0 GPA. The challenge is we only look at the college prep classes, and so that's where students fall below that GPA requirement, is in those specific classes that we look at. 4 years of English, 4 years of math, 4 years of science now. That's something that started, that's new, that took place this year, and 3 years of social science and 2 years of the foreign language. Those are the courses we're specifically looking at when we calculate the student's high school GPA.
So let me get this straight. So you can have 4 years of PE and electives and have A's, but that does not factor into the GPA the college is looking at.
That's correct, and that's standard operating procedure for colleges and universities, to only look at the requirements by the state system.
It's a lot to take in for someone who's not used to dealing with the college process. And I know that, and we deal with a lot of students who are the first in their families to go to college, and I think it is still true that even though there are restrictions that didn't exist before, we still do a good job of working with students and helping them through the process. But they're much better off reaching out early than waiting to August 1st. Because then we don't have the time to do a lot of the things that we could do.
You have to become a miracle worker.
And that's probably the key takeaway, is the earlier you apply to an institution, the better your chances of completing the process and getting admitted.
Let me ask you this, Todd. What about standardized tests like the ACT and the SAT? I'm wondering, so if students have those tests, do y'all use that as a factor when you're looking at other things like GPA and other items?
It's not required for the admissions process, but it does help. Just the fact of taking the SAT or ACT increases a student's likelihood of being admitted. And so we strongly encourage the test, but they're not required for admissions at this point in time at Georgia Highlands College.
Because I'm just thinking, it's kind of surprising to me how many students have not taken an ACT or an SAT at least once. And you're kind of like, how did that happen? And I guess before, where it's not necessarily required at Highlands, it's still a test they should be taking just to increase their chances. So I think that's something we definitely have to work on in the community, is changing that perception that even though it's an access college, it may not be required, but it's highly encouraged that you take the test.
And I should note, it's not required for admissions to the college, but it is for certain programs. So if you want to go into our most popular degree, nursing, they currently require the SAT or ACT. The dental hygiene assistant program requires the ACT or SAT as part of their admissions requirement. So if they don't complete the test as a senior, they're going to have to as a freshman in college in order to apply to those programs.
And I know the rules are a little different for non-traditional students, older students. At what point, or is there a point at which older students, we don't look at, say, their high school coursework as much?
5 years after they would have graduated from high school.
So 5 years after they graduate, we no longer look at a high school transcript.
We look at the high school transcript, but we don't look at, for example, the college prep curriculum requirements. We consider those null and void at that point in time.
Okay.
And so
then it's just a compass test mainly?
Exactly.
Okay.
All right, so that would be one reason to encourage people who have been out of school for a few years to go ahead and look into it, because if they didn't do quite so well in certain areas in high school, it might not matter anymore.
Correct, and Georgia Highlands College, as an access institution, also accepts the GED, so you don't even have to have the high school diploma. The GED would work for many adult students as a way to become enrolled at the institution.
Well, we're coming up on a break in a few seconds here. When we come back, we should probably tackle financial aid. So hang in, we'll get to financial aid right after this. Stay with us.
Traditional light bulbs actually generate 9 times more heat than light. Switch to Energy Star light bulbs, and you'll realize just how much cash you are really burning through. Saving energy saves you money. Learn more at EnergySavers.gov.
Welcome back to Community Watch, and we're talking with Todd Jones, who is the Vice President of Student Affairs and the Campus Dean of the Floyd Campus.
And Heritage Hall.
And Heritage Hall.
That's correct.
Okay.
Before we
at
get to
Georgia
financial
Highlands,
aid,
yes, what?
I got a question about the admissions cost, the test. How much does the test cost, and are there any waivers for the test under circumstances? And I had another question, Todd, and I can't remember now, but the admissions test, because I know that's a barrier for some students.
And there's a fee for the admissions application.
Yeah,
too.
the application fee has not changed since I've been here, since 2005, and it's still $20 for the application fee. The Compass test is a one-time fee of $20, and that's one fee whether you're taking one test or all 3 tests. So it's a one-time fee of $20. If a student has completed the SAT and has received an SAT fee waiver from their guidance counselor, we can use that waiver to waive both the application fee and the Compass test fee.
Oh, but they must have a fee waiver from the counselor.
For the SAT, we currently don't use the ACT, but the SAT, we use the SAT fee waiver to waive those fees.
Okay.
Another reason to take the SAT.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, we know in some schools the SAT is not as pushed as much as the ACT.
Right.
And so students, so then when you make that argument, should I take the ACT or the SAT? Well, that's a different reason right there. Clearly, if I had to pick one, as a parent, I would say, well, you could take the SAT because you could also use that fee waiver.
Right.
For that, and I'm assuming, is that just with Georgia Highlands or with other state schools as well?
The SAT is commonly accepted. The fee waiver is commonly accepted at most institutions as a way. The ACT, some do, some don't. There's been some challenges with that, with some school systems providing those out to students that shouldn't receive those. So there's been some pushback with the ACT. Typically, we'll accept the ACT fee waiver and the SAT fee if we have the scores to go with it to verify the student actually took it. And so we'll work with students in that case on the ACT.
Okay. But the key thing is you need the scores to show that they actually took the test. And
the Atlanta school system in particular, we discovered, was handing those out to all students versus trying to meet the requirements that the students receiving free and reduced lunch and those type of things that they have to do to qualify students for the waiver.
But generally speaking, you'd recommend both tests, wouldn't you?
Yes, but I know sometimes students and parents, I don't think parents understand. My children always took both because I think the tests, give you a better picture if you got both of where you really are. But I think a lot of parents get caught up in this not really having all information, and a lot of parents, I think, lean toward the ACT sometimes, some of the lower performing students, because it may not be as much math or for whatever reason. And this, but really, you need to know this information
now,
so you can make better choices.
I've heard the story about the less math, but I don't think that's true. I mean, there's trigonometry on the ACT. There's not on the SAT. So I don't get that.
Well, that's why we're doing this show.
Oh, okay.
So we can inform parents that they take both of them, if all possible. Take both
Especially
of
if your school system's providing them for free.
Yes.
Take advantage of that opportunity.
Financial aid. Now, really is an easier process than it used to be. But it's still a process. But the key to financial aid is, again, to do it early, so that you have time, the colleges have time to process it, and if you have to make any changes or do anything, you have time to do that.
Correct.
So tell us about what parents have to do to apply for financial aid.
Okay, good question. You stated that it's become easier, and it has. They've implemented on the free application for federal student aid what's called the IRS data retrieval tool. So if you've done your taxes, do your taxes early. Is the first thing you really need to do is get your taxes done early. So if you have a senior that's graduating this year, you need to be working on your income taxes now and get those at least processed so that you can start the financial aid process. When you click on that IRS data retrieval tool,
And this is on the FAFSA.
on the FAFSA
right.
itself,
Okay.
you're giving them permission to go to your tax document to the IRS, and they will fill in the information for you. It basically pre-populates, pulls that information, pre-populates, so that cuts down on mistakes, cuts down on errors. It will cut down on the amount of paperwork that the financial aid office may even have to request from you if you're selected for the process known as verification. So that's great if you're able to use that particular tool. It's approaching 80% of our students receive some form of financial aid, so we know it's very important for our student population. So completing that process earlier saves a lot of heartache for parents, students, and those that mentor students in this situation, because it can take some time to work through that process. There are students that are selected for a process known as verification. That requires additional documentation that the students have to provide, and can delay the process even further.
But you know what? Even though it's easier, I sometimes just financial aid, I think sometimes is an excuse that if you know your child is going to college and you know you intend on your child to go to college, then you don't have to wait to start that process of financial aid. Even if your child doesn't graduate, you still can start the financial aid process very soon, so that when they graduate and you have their transcript, that part is already done. I mean, for some reason it seems like we're waiting too late to start the financial aid process, when really right about now, if you got a senior, you should be starting that process of financial aid. I mean, you should be at least, because you don't have to, you can fill out your FAFSA, and that has nothing to do with Georgia Highlands or any college. You can fill that out online, just go online and get that done, so that when I apply for Georgia Highlands, that part is already taken care of.
Yeah, that's a good point. The only thing I would recommend is that you have your taxes done first. There are some institutions that encourage families to do an estimated income, and my experience has been that throws the financial aid off. You either overestimate, underestimate, some changes have occurred, and it causes additional problems. So get your taxes done, then do the FAFSA. A nationwide priority deadline is July 1, just to give you an idea that most colleges, July 1 is the priority date for financial aid for classes that start in August. So they want it well in a month in advance would be the priority deadline.
So you would say April 1, right?
Oh, at least.
Yes, that would be my recommendation.
And the reason is, I know this is just sort of my impression of the FAFSA based on working with students over many years, but it seems to me that the FAFSA is kind of built for students who are in a traditional family, and we have so many students that don't fit into a traditional, two-parent family, that there are often complications with the FAFSA and needing to provide additional documents, and that can be very tricky. So if you do the initial FAFSA early enough, that will leave you the time that you need to work through potential issues like that.
Yeah, that's another great point. And You know, we see, for example, students that have lived with their grandparents for a number of years, but the grandparents have never been named legal guardians. So that complicates things. You have situations where the parents may be deceased or incarcerated, and that causes some additional issues with completing that. So if you start the process early and you get to those questions, then that's where you can call your local community college and say, hey, I need some help with this, and we'll be glad to help students. Most colleges, and Georgia Highlands included, will do FAFSA days, and we'll go to the school systems when they have programs to help families with their FAFSA. We'll do things on campus. So we'll be glad to assist families with completing that process, especially if they're involved in some of those issues that are a little more complicated.
Now, we're talking mainly about students who want to begin school, or I guess return to school, because FAFSA, you have to do it every year.
Right.
In the fall. But what if a student wants to do some early college in the summer?
Well, they can still complete the FAFSA. It would be the previous year's FAFSA, and this varies from institution. Where institutions have some ability to change things is when they select their start date for a term, when they're going to start the financial aid process. Some institutions start that in the summer, some do that in the fall. We're on the fall basis. The advantage to coming during the summer is you get to use some of last year's financial aid because it's only good for 1 year, and then you start over with a new set of financial aid for this next year. So the advantage to summer is you can use some funds that you would normally not have access to because you would start that particular. So you're actually completing the 13-14 FAFSA if you're looking at enrolling in the summer.
And for students who are going to another college, they're going to Georgia State or Kennesaw or wherever, they could still come to Georgia Highlands in the summer and get some credits out of the way and be that much further ahead.
And that's becoming a more common trend. People are checking their wallets a little more closely, and they look at the savings they can have. You know, it's around $20,000 at UGA right now a year. So we're seeing quite a few seniors graduating, enrolling during the summer, taking a course or two to just get ahead, get their feet wet, save a little bit of money, and then they may do that every summer as a transient student, come back and take some additional classes just to save some money.
And the savings pretty dramatic, isn't it?
Pretty significant.
Yeah.
What is the cost of attending Highlands for you roughly?
Probably around $1,500 to $1,600 when you include
semester?
per semester. So about $3,000 a year for 2 semesters.
Can't beat that.
Like I said, world-class education.
Well, we're coming up on another break. When we come back, we will give you some contact information so you can find out more about what we've talked about today and ask additional questions. So get something to write with if you don't already have it. We'll be right back.
If you drive buzzed, it could cost you around $10,000. You'll face major legal fees, major fines, and steep insurance penalties. You could lose everything. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Welcome back to Community Watch. We've been talking with Todd Jones, the Vice President for Student Affairs and the Campus Dean for the Floyd Campus and Heritage Hall at Georgia Highlands. We've been talking about admissions and a lot of different things. If somebody wants to get more information about Georgia Highlands or any of these subjects, should they call or check the website has a lot of this, highlands.edu. The phone number would be 706-295-6339.
That is
right?
Correct. Yes, very good.
Got it memorized.
That's the financial aid.
That's the admissions
Admission office. That's not the general number.
It includes financial aid. Yeah, that's the financial aid and admissions office.
And I should add, on our webpage, if you click on admissions or financial aid, we have a new link there called Need Help, GHC 411 Need Help. If they click on that, they have the ability to create a ticket, ask any questions, set up a campus tour, whatever they like to do, and we'll be able to respond to them within 24 business hours.
That's great. Well, thank you, and thank you for being with us. this week on Community Watch. We'll see you next time. Bye now.